Here comes young Samuel Basallo to the Baltimore Orioles big league club, a highly rated prospect. JJ, somebody that you've been keeping track of for quite some time, and here we go. What should we expect? I also want to throw this out there real quick before you answer. We do prospect profiles on the Baseball America YouTube channel. We did one on him, so it's still relevant. You can check that out, but let's get the latest here from the guy right next to me on the screen. JJ, what do you think?
As a hitter, Samuel Basallo is truly special. He just turned 21 this past week. He hit 270, 377, 589 with 23 homers in just 76 games at AAA this year. There's almost nothing to dislike about what he's doing offensively. As far as average EV in AAA, second in AAA among 200 plus plate appearances, Roman Anthony, number one. Among average bat speed, fourth in AAA. Among barrels, as far as batted balls, versus and plate appearances, number one in AAA. We are talking about a true elite hitter with elite power, who, by the way, as we just said, is 21 years old and just turned 21. And Uncle Ted, you were wrong. Dylan Beavers is not better, and he will not be better than Samuel Basallo. Sorry, that's just true. Reading our comments as we have them come in. The key question, though, is that Samuel Basallo is a catcher / first baseman. So what I wanted to spend a lot of time on working on for this was, okay, well, what about him as a catcher? And the thing that I kind of came away with is he's not bad back there. Now, the tricky part is he's 20 and he doesn't have nearly as much experience behind the plate as most catchers when they reach the majors, because they're just not as good a hitter as Samuel Basallo. The problem Samuel Basallo has had is he's so good offensively that he keeps getting bumped up. And so he's reached the majors at an age where most of his contemporaries aren't even coming close to sniffing the majors. The last one we saw who did it at this age was Francisco Alvarez. But the key difference there was Alvarez was coming up to a team that needed a catcher. So the Mets were willing to live with the possibilities of him having some ups and downs behind the plate. Basallo is joining a team that has an established catcher. So it'll be interesting to see how much they are willing to kind of live with what I would say is really kind of minor growing pains. He's going to have to adjust to the majors. But the thing that does jump out, and that graphic right there shows it, there are not guys who reach the majors and catch 25 plus games in their age 21 season. Basallo, like you said, could do that next year and qualify for that. Check out that list, and you are looking at guys those are your 21st century guys, other than Luis Torrens, who was a Rule 5 pick. These are guys who generally, Dainier Navarro was a useful 1,000 games in the big leagues, but not a star. The rest of that list, those are stars, and then in Alvarez's case, a guy who is kind of establishing himself potentially as a star. Basallo is a truly special player, but when you talk about him defensively, his throwing arm is strong. He just needs to kind of get a little quicker with unfurling himself. He's really big. His blocking is solid. Hands aren't great, but receiving, framing is fine. Like, there's a lot there that really does jump out to me as is, you know what, if the Orioles, and he wants to do it, if the Orioles are willing to work on it and willing to give him the opportunities, I don't think it's crazy to think that he can catch, even if he is one of the bigger guys out there that you're going to see catching.
JJ, after your Synergy deep dive, did you walk away more optimistic based on what you went in thinking about his defense? And to bring it back to the hands point, I feel like that kept coming up in the story. The hands, if anything, were a limitation. Now I'm curious, based on catchers that you've evaluated in the past, where your optimism is in terms of that getting better for him as he gets more time in the majors.
I would say that it's definitely always going to be a limiting factor, because the really special guys are the ones the big league catchers, a lot of them are wizards at this point. To me, I always think of that ball where it's kind of, they're set up here and then it kind of bounces away to their left and they backhand it with their glove. Basallo can't do that. If it gets outside of his frame to his right, he has a trouble kind of snagging that ball that the pitcher just really missed his target with. With the framing, sometimes you'll see him a little bit have to kind of catch it first and not do that fluid motion where he's kind of dragging it in the zone throughout the reception, throughout the catch. But I would say with all of that, it's not bad. It's just not great. And it's probably going to be a limiting factor. You're not talking about someone who's probably going to become a Gold Glover behind there, but you are talking about someone who is turning in average pop times right now with some of the best arm strength in AAA. You're talking about a guy who's been pretty much an average framer in AAA this year, really good at the top of the zone, a little bit not as good at the bottom of the zone as a framer. We're talking about someone who's bilingual, who can speak to the Spanish-speaking pitchers and to the English-speaking pitchers, and is able to be a great communicator. And I think the other key thing about this is, and has shown the desire, he wants to do this. He wants to catch, which I always kind of talk about, because that's really, catching's terrible. Catching's hard. And if you don't want to do it, you're not going to probably do it well. Well, Samuel Basallo has over the years shown that he wants to catch.
Let's just say, though, JJ, that first base ends up being the destination for him. You mentioned the bat earlier and how this is a special player in terms of the hit power combination, rare, especially for a catcher. But if he does end up at first base, where does that bat stack up among first basemen? Would he be somebody who's capable of hanging with what we see with modern first base bats?
Yeah, he should be one of the best hitting first basemen in the major leagues. Again, we don't want to go overboard for this, but guys who reach the majors at 21 like this, that puts him in a pretty rare group already. The guy I can't help but kind of compare him to when you talk about this, Roman Anthony, him aren't perfect analogs, but Roman Anthony, like him, kind of reached the majors at roughly the same age, hits the ball exceptionally hard, I would say that Anthony has a little bit better batting eye, but Basallo has kind of enough bat to ball skills to really make it work, even though he's a little bit more aggressive, I would say, on pitches, and can be beaten in the zone a little bit more than Anthony. But that's the kind of guy, when we talk about from a pure power standpoint, when you talk about the bat speed, when you talk about the exit velocities, when you talk about the ability to consistently generate hard contact, like I said, when you look at barrel rate in AAA, Samuel Basallo is number 1, Roman Anthony's number 2. So that's what we're kind of talking about here. And if you look at his season this year, it's not all that different than what we've seen from Roman Anthony. This kind of power, 23 homers in 76 games in AAA as a 20-year-old, is something you just don't see very often. There are examples. You can find a Kareem Garcia, every now and then, someone who reached the AAA and produced at a very young age and then struggled to kind of keep it going. But it's pretty rare. More normally, it's the guys like Giancarlo Stanton, who had 37 homers before he, by his age 20, before he turned 21 in AAA. That's the kind of thing that you more often see, is the guys who move this fast, and especially when they have the background of the tools like Basallo has, they're the guys who end up being really special bats as well.
It's a great breakdown. Orioles fans should be excited, right? This is somebody that you've been waiting for if you're an Orioles fan, and here you go, and at a very young age. Great breakdown there from JJ.